The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. Chapter 29. Shaken Resolve. Part 2. The normally empty throne room was packed with ponies, most of whom were wearing guard armor. Elias spotted a few familiar faces, with Palisade briefly poking his head out to give Elias a silent wave. The human made no attempts to join any of the conversations. They talked to each other in quiet circles, and Elias strode forward. Their eyes quickly fell on him. While most gave him the standard mix of horrified gasps with the occasional look of respect, several ponies in odd white armor gave him death glares. Elias met their glares evenly, showing no emotion as he let his bad eye do the work of intimidation for him. The effect was immediate as the ponies flinched and looked away. For a moment, Elias realized that the scar may have just been a blessing in disguise, a new tool in his arsenal to use as he saw fit. He didn't have long to ponder that thought, however, because Celestia spotted the tall human from her throne and smiled widely as she raised her hooves to quiet the chatter in the room.
Gentle ponies, we are all accounted for. Please let us begin.
The cluster of ponies dissipated, forming into loose blocks. The white-armored ponies pushed their way to the front, and Elias decided to remain near the side, leaning silently against a column as he tucked his thumbs into his sword belt. On the throne room sat the two princesses, and as the room adjusted and fell silent, they cast about with both pairs of eyes falling on him at the same time. Celestia smiled again.
Come, Elias, to the front. We have much to discuss, and you are a very important member of that discussion.
All eyes turned towards the human, who could only blink dumbly back. He felt abnormally nervous, and it felt like everyone was judging his every action. Why that mattered to Elias, he didn't know, but he did his best to shove the feelings aside as he pushed off the column, walking to the base of the throne. The ponies in white scowled at him and he fell beside them, but they remained silent as Elias fell into the loose attention. He tried not to shuffle his feet nervously as he clasped his hands behind his back. He had a sour feeling in his gut, and from the looks that Luna was giving him, this meeting was not going to make his day any better. Celestia was all smiles, however, as she addressed the crowd of ponies.
I thank you all for being here on such short notice. I understand that every pony has been working hard after the failed invasion attempt, but my sister and I thought that now would be an ideal to begin implementing some changes now that we have fully repelled the changelings.
A loud cheer went up from the ponies, making Elias flinch slightly. Why was he being so jumpy? His mind felt like it was teetering on the edge of the abyss, and he couldn't figure out why. The feeling was sickening, and Elias had to blink rapidly to prevent the room from spinning. As the ponies quieted down, the sensation died down, but it didn't go away. It stayed subtly at the center of his head, making him incredibly anxious. His only sense of relief came from the fact that nobody seemed to notice his sudden bout of paranoia. Celestia continued once the room was quiet once more.
Now, I know you are all eager to hear the results of the Royal Assessment training exercise, but we have an important matter to attend to before doing so.
Elias felt his left eye twitch as she looked down at him with a wide smile. His eyes flicked over to Luna, who was smiling as well, though her smile seemed a lot more comforting. She suddenly motioned for him to remain calm as Celestia looked down to the crowd again.
As you all know, Queen Chrysalis and her hordes were defeated by Princess Cadence and Prince Alma, but we cannot in good conscience discount the valorous efforts of one of our own. This god was solely responsible for defending Princess Luna from an attempted assassination attempt by the changelings, and is also responsible for escorting her to a safe location during the invasion, battling through waves of attackers as he risked his life and limb for the safety of his princess, and for the safety of Equestria.
Elias took a deep breath as he resisted the urge to refute her words. There was nothing soul about it. Night Flesh had been on his side the entire time, and if it weren't for the efforts of several of the castle staff, they would have been swarmed in the hallways. However, Elias understood the need to make legends, and that would require a bit of embellishment. Though he doubted he fit the bill, the hero could inspire others for greatness, give them a goal to reach for, a role model to emulate. Elias was more than sure that Caesar had an army of advisors and confidants at his back, but nobody talked about them, just the man himself with all of his accomplishments. Elias just wished somebody else was in the position, as Luna waved him forward. The blue unicorn met him at the base of the throne, her smile bright as Captain Nightshade handed her a small blue gold medal in the shape of a crescent moon. Luna took the medal in her hooves, leaning close as she pinned it to his tunic over his heart.
I can tell by the look in your eyes that you think you do not deserve this, Elias.
She whispered in his ear, intentionally fumbling with the medal, giving her longer to speak.
I only ask that you wait long enough to give it to Bookbinder. She will take great pleasure in seeing your award. Agreed?
Elias sighed slightly, and his breath ruffled the fur on her neck. Fine, princess. I just did what I promised I would, though. Nothing more. Luna took a step back, beaming wildly.
Perhaps, Guardsman, But I thank you regardless, and I apologize for what will come next. I had wanted this matter to remain private.
Elias tilted his head as she made an official proclamation in his honor, causing the ponies to cheer and stomp with their hooves as he stood in numb silence. What did they mean? What comes next? Were they going to cast him out? Was it the rage he had entered when fighting the changelings? No, that couldn't be it. They would have secreted him away quietly, with nobody being wiser. No, this was something else, and Elias had a sinking feeling that it was much worse than being made to disappear. His eyes widened with a realization that he looked around the room. It took him a second to make the connections, but it was there regardless. The ponies were largely made up of prospective guard captains, most of whom have acted as a team captains during the rat exercise. The former Captain Murmur was nowhere to be found. A glance to the left of the throne room found Captain Chaser and Captain Nightshade as she resumed her position furthest away from the steps. Both were watching Elias' carefully measured pride. The human blinked as he looked back to Luna, would occasionally glance in his direction, but would give him no further hints about what was to come. They wouldn't dare, Elias thought, his mind beginning to panic. There's no way in hell they could be that blind. Celeste cleared her throat and spread her wings as she motioned for the room to quiet once again. She smiled widely out at the ponies.
On to business then. Unfortunately, while we appreciate the myriad of applications as well as your stellar performance records, we can only select a few for the open captain positions. The rest of this meeting will be top secret, and only the highest level of our guards will be beholden to the information we will discuss. As such, when your name is called, please make your way to the base of the throne. Once the reading has concluded, the rest of you are dismissed to continue your duties as usual. The ponies in the back stared at Celestia hopefully as the list was levitated before her by her assistant. Excitement crackled in the air, but all Elias could do was pray that his name wasn't on the list. The universe spit in his eye instantly, as his name was the first one read. A grumble of shock rolled through the room. Elias instinctively fell back onto the harder part of his mind, letting his posture stiffen as his lip curled downward in a hard frown. Since he was already before the throne, he didn't move, instead straightening his back as he waited for the alicorn to continue. Celeste did so quickly, rattling off name after name as a colorful assortment of ponies strode forth. Though the list was only a dozen names, it seemed to take forever, with ponies glaring at him the whole while. Elias tuned them out, staring blankly at a wall behind Luna's head. The blue alicorn refused to look at him, and that set his skin further on edge as time seemed to crawl by. Once Celestia was finished, the list disappeared and she smiled widely. I thank you all for your submissions, and should more positions become available in the future, those who are not named shall be on the short list for consideration. You are dismissed for the afternoon, and I, as well as all of Equestria, thank you for your service.
The ponies sharply saluted, and they began to filter out quietly, whispering and grumbling amongst themselves while the named ponies remained in place before the throne. Captain Nightshade and Captain Chaser fell beside the ponies in white and the doors closed, leaving the room suspended in a complete, unnerving silence. Elias caught a quick glance that Luna gave him, and it drove a spike of fear in between his shoulder blades. Nothing good was going to come of this.
Gentle ponies, I thank you for being here today,
Celestia said.
And I must offer my congratulations. You have been selected amongst the finest of our guard that Equestria has to offer, and today all of your hard work and devotion shall be rewarded.
All the ponies seemed to straighten, and eager grimaces towards Elias forgotten as they perked up. Elias could only remain still, his mind paralyzed as his gut became weighed down by stones of fear. His poker face must have been excellent, because Celestia continued on without a second thought.
Before we distribute your new ranks and titles, I think it's best to tell you why we are so rapidly expanding our guard forces.
Her assistant dragged a large chalkboard from behind the throne, on which was drawn a detailed map of Equestria, with areas as far as Saddle Arabia. Elias hadn't read much about the lands of the west save for the Minotaurs, but he knew that the ponies in Saddle Arabia were fast allies of Equestria, and that they were in a near constant state of war or diplomacy to end war. They came with the territory of being the largest weapon manufacturer in the region, with 3 major cities at least that only produced machines of war. The rest of the state was largely agrarian, like Equestria was, however, with much of the north their nation purely consistent of farmers and simple trades ponies.
As you may know, this road,
Celestia said, motioning to a white line that ran through the Minotaur lands,
is one of the only 2 routes that connecting our kingdom to Saddle Arabia. The Badlands and the frozen glaciers to the north are impassable, while the roads to the south through Zebrica are off limits due to a series of nasty conflicts engulfing their lands.
The white eloquent sighed.
While we have already succeeded in attaining non-aggression pacts with the majority of the zebra tribes, we have also offered to act as diplomatic intermediaries. Unfortunately, they seek to resolve their differences eternally, and we have been declined by all those we have offered our services to. They have declared that any pony found within their borders will be detained as a spy, and with our current plans, marching an army through their lands would be an outright declaration of war. As such,
she continued,
we shall be conducting a march through the northern Minotaur lands to the main tradeway. It is my hope they will be unopposed, and if we are lucky, completely unnoticed. My sister has caution and pragmatism, however, and we'll be expending all of our guard forces in anticipation for the march.
A brown mare to Elias's left raised her hoof. Celestia inclined her head.
Yes, God's pony twirl? Respectfully, Princess, but why? Why can't we use our usual methods to get to Saddle Arabia? You and Princess Luna could be there and back in a flash with teleportation.
Princess Celestia smiled.
Indeed, we could under normal circumstances, God's pony. But that brings me to the second portion of this briefing. This is not a simple diplomatic mission, but one of magical intent.
She tapped the southern portion of the Minotaur lands.
Recently, the Minotaur clans have become agitated, and as such, there has been an increasing number of attacks on our trade caravans on the main tradeway. We have tried diplomacy, but the clan chiefs will not listen, claiming that weak ponies have no idea what it means to be diplomatic.
Several of the ponies in white scoffed loudly, grumbling about filthy brutes and uneducated animals. These grumbles were ignored as Celestia continued.
Since they are unwilling to relent in their attacks, my sister and I have decided to simply remove the problem, and that is the road itself.
She looked carefully down at the row of ponies and the one human, beating into their eyes carefully.
This information cannot leave this room, and if any of you so much as breathe a word of it, you will be imprisoned until after the march is complete. All of your rights will be suspended, and you will remain in the dungeons. Is that clear?
Everyone nodded silently, their faces grim. Celestia took a deep breath.
Though you may not admit it, and I will likely not ask you to do so, some of you likely wondered why I and my sister weren't unable to truly assist in the defense of Canterlot during the wedding.
That piqued Elias's interest, and momentarily, the fear that had been hounding his mind vanished. He had been marred because of Luna's inaction, and while he couldn't find it within himself to blame the Alicorn, he still wanted a reason why she hadn't fought. They were supposed to be all-powerful beings, after all.
Luna and I, since the beginning of the new year, have been conserving our magic,
Celestia explained.
The purpose of this march would be to establish a permanent, always functioning portal between Saddle Arabia, our client state, and Canterlot. To accomplish this task, we had two options.
She smiled grimly.
The first was an abhorrent practice, and I think you all could agree that sacrificing 300 unicorns for their magic would be a poor choice.
The weak chuckle passed through the ponies, but Elias could tell some of them feared even the mention of such magic.
The second choice is much safer, but requires a great deal of personal sacrifice on the part of the Alicorns of Equestria,
Celestia continued.
Myself, Princess Luna, and Princess Cadence have already gone through the first two stages of magical conservation, limiting our Earth Pony magic as well as our Pegasus magic to nothing. This has shown itself in the lack of ability to fly, as well as physical weakness.
That explained how he was so easily able to push Luna around when they had gotten to her hideaway. Elias got a brief flash of anger from the blue Alicorn as she looked at him, clearly thinking the same thing, but he could only shrug silently. His strategy had kept her safe and nobody had even died because of it. He wasn't going to apologize for a bit of needed aggression.
As for the beginning of the march, we have begun the final stage, conserving our largest well of energy, our unicorn magic,
Celestia said.
Common methods of magical transportation, such as teleportation, will disrupt the storage of magic, rendering our efforts moot. Furthermore, chariots and balloons cannot make the journey fast enough. We will have at some point to land, in which case we would be helpless. The safest method is an organized force of protection, by the way of a military march.
She looked slightly ashamed as she continued.
Unfortunately, my actions at the wedding nearly sabotaged the efforts of the last few months, and only when I had begun attacking Chrysalis did I realize that I needed to rely on others to fight the battle. I let her magic overpower my own, and tasked the elements to defeat the changelings. Luckily, Princess Cadence was able to tap into the ambient love magic between herself and Prince Armor, and they drove away the invasion without destroying our efforts. She has my sincerest thanks for that, and I have given her freedom to take an extended honeymoon, otherwise she would be with us today.
And at what point would you have stepped in? Elias asked, his tone sharp. The words cut like a knife through the room, and Celestia seemed startled that somebody had spoken up.
I am afraid I don't understand,
Celestia said, slowly, her shot clear in her tone. That only brought Elias' anger higher. Then allow me to clarify, he said, his voice ringing with bitterness. How many of your subjects, how many ponies had to end up dead in a ditch for you to step in and cast aside whatever this is? He waved his hand at the chalkboard. Because what I'm hearing is that you almost allowed invasion into the heart of your kingdom rather than sacrifice... what? A safe trade route? Elias stared at her with disbelief. I don't know about you, but the stakes just don't stack up in my eyes. He raised his left hand. On one hand, you have the ponies that I imagine you love and care about. He raised his right hand. In the other, you have a road that you don't want to use anymore. Those don't balance in my mind. It's a bit more complex than that, guardsman. Chaser cut in, his voice a bit short but not angry. The main tradeaway was Saddle Arabia is plagued with cases of kidnappings, raids, murders, and that's just what we know about. The Minotaurs that use merchants that travel the road for ransom, plundering their cargoes. The Pegasus glanced towards Celestia, who nodded in agreement, motioning for the guard captain to continue. We also believe that those changelings were able to build their army for the invasion, Chaser said. We've had dozens of missing pony cases along the road, and I believe Chrysalis and her minions have been swiping small caravans for their love. Some of our scouts have found abandoned cargoes with no trace of ponies who had been carrying them. We want that to stop, and this portal solves the issue. The next invasion might not even happen even if we could choke off their supply of love. Elias scowled, but silently relented at that point. The logic was sound enough, if not the most effective method to solve the issue. He still wanted an answer about the point that would have been enough for the princesses to jump and fight in, but with the reports he's gotten his hands on, they'd only survived by the skin of their teeth, accompanied by magical bullshit that shouldn't have worked in the first place. Elias felt his eye twitch as he returned to the glares of the ponies around him. Besides the two alicorns that were looking between each other nervously, only 3 ponies weren't shooting him death glares, and they were the only 3 whose names he knew. The rest, however, didn't know him personally, and Elias used his reputation as well as his tall, powerful posture to cow them into looking away. The ponies occasionally glanced in his direction, but not one dared to speak up against him. After she finished whispering with Luna, Celestia straightened, and she smiled widely.
Let us get back on track. I understand your concerns, Elias, but rest assured, my sister and I had contingencies in place even if Princess Cadence and Prince Arma hadn't intervened.
Elias sighed and shook his head, but motioned for her to continue. Words were meaningless until she showed them substantial evidence of a backup plan. You wouldn't believe such a thing existed. No sense fighting about it in public, however. Celestia sat straight up and continued. Her assistant levitated a series of new shining sets of armor, accompanied by a myriad of different plumes, and what Elias assumed were indicative of different ranks. The white armored ponies made sure they were the first in line, and while Elias couldn't help but snort at their pettiness, he was surprised that even Nightshade and Chaser took armor from the racks. Promotions for everyone indeed, or at least almost everyone. Elias let out a small breath of relief when he didn't see any human-sized or shaped. Maybe he was just being included in this because he was a hero, though he suspected it was actually because he had value as a military advisor. Still, advisor he could do. The assistant, along with a trio of guards, helped distribute the armor out to the ponies, who began excitedly chatter amongst themselves while Celestia watched with a smile.
As of today, you have all been promoted, and you shall receive your permanent orders shortly. To make things simpler, however, please stand in order by your branch.
She looked to the now golden-clad ponies first.
Dukes Arrowheart, Shattered Shield, Lionheart, Dragon Eye, and Everfree, as well as Sir Orange Juice, you shall be generals of the Solar Guard, and your captain shall be Brisk Day and Solar Comet.
The pair of unicorns saluted the 6 new generals crisply, and Elias couldn't help but shake his head in exasperation. He had no idea what plan would benefit them from having 6 separate commanders of one force, but Elias imagined that if he was going to be advising, the Solar Guard was going to be the worst going by a long shot. As the golden-clad ponies fell in line, Celestia continued.
General Chaser, I assume you already have selected your replacement, as well as your officers?
Celestia asked the black-armored pony. The Pegasus had already replaced his helmet, and even then, he was still holding it carefully on his back. He nodded briskly. Indeed I have, Princess. I will inform Royal Guard's pony Bloody Bandage and Ice Blossom of their promotions immediately following this meeting. Celestia smiled and nodded.
Excellent. Luna?
The blue unicorn inclined her head towards her sister and looked down at the blue-armored ponies.
Nightshade, you and Starry Skies shall act as co-generals, and your captain shall be Palisade, Violet Blossom, Cinnamon Twirl, and Spectre. I shall leave it to your discretion who is your subordinates is whom.
The ponies nodded and saluted sharply before falling into line, chattering excitedly amongst themselves, save for Nightshade, who was regarding Elias with concern written clearly on her face. That didn't bode well. Like any potentially hazardous situation, Elias regarded it all with a flat, almost bored stare. The emotion felt false, but maybe if he could broadcast enough confidence, he could get himself to believe it. As Luna turned to sit on her throne, Saucy regarded him with a smile.
Now, to become used to your new routines and procedures, our new captains are dismissed to go about their regularly scheduled duties. The rest of this meeting shall be between myself, my sister, and the generals. Thank you for attending, every pony. I look forward to what we will accomplish together.
Elias bit his cheek as he resisted the urge to walk away with the captains. Despite her words, Saucy was still watching him, more than indicating he should stay in place. He didn't like that at all, and he had to concentrate to avoid twitching in place. Energy was rising in his body and his mind started kicking in overdrive. Both voices returned, but only one in the center was making sense. He wanted to run. He wanted to run, collect his gear, find a bookbinder and night flash and make a break for it. The rear voice cautioned against that, but it couldn't offer much else, as it was confused, desperately seeking out more information as Elias stood in place, doing his best not to panic. Clearly, Elias was not the only one uncomfortable with this continued presence, because a red-brown unicorn stepped up forward, frowning at Elias as he asked, "Princess, if I may, why is Guardsman still here? I understand completely awarding him for his valor, but will he not be a strategy meeting, something beyond the Guardsman's capabilities?" Normally, Elias would have snapped at such an insult, but he desperately wished the pony's words would buy him the ticket out of the throne room. He needed to be somewhere else. The shoe that was about to drop, he could feel it in the air. Saucy shook her head, however.
Nay, General Lionheart. Elias is exactly where he needs to be, especially given that what I have to say involves him the most, crucially.
No. Elias mentally whispered to himself.
Starting tomorrow, we shall begin a new recruitment campaign.
Saucy said as her assistant flipped on the chalkboard. Elias felt his eye twitch as he saw the entry of the furthest right, under which his name sat. They hadn't listened to a word that had come out of his mouth. Not a fucking word.
It is our hope to have an army of over 10,000 strong for this march,
Saucy continued, ignorant of Elias' eternal conflict.
These new guards will, of course, be trained, outfitted, and subordinate to all of you, who will act as coordinates and leaders should we face combat.
She continued speaking, and somewhere inside, Elias felt a part of his mind snap, crumbling away under the weight of the words he saw on the damned chalkboard. For a moment, rage climbed high in his mind, and his body shook with pent-up aggression and hatred. His right hand reached for his sword belt. Instead of grasping the hilt of feather, the hand drifted higher, meeting his left as it undid the pin of the metal stuck in his tunic. Elias ignored the glances he got as he repinned the metal to his sword belt, then removed the familiar weight from his waist. Saucy only stopped talking when the leather bundle landed with a loud thud at her feet, startling her as Elias turned around and walked away. Cold, calculating calm swept over his mind. Elias felt confident as he strode away from the throne, breathing deeply to maintain the state. He needed to leave before something much worse happened. He didn't walk fast enough.
Elias,
Saucy called.
Where are you going? You have not been told what you will be doing.
What he would be doing? Funny phrasing that. Elias had a very good idea of what he would be doing very soon. He ignored the advice of both parts of his mind that insisted that he keep walking in silence. Elias half turned as he stared at Celestia with his bad eye, a nasty twitch racing through his face as he smiled maniacally. "Oh?" he said. "Then tell me, Princess, because maybe my eyesight might be poor. Because that?" he said, jabbing his finger like a dagger at the chalkboard. "Looks like you want me to not only command an army, but to build one from nothing. Am I wrong?" Celestia frowned and shook her head.
No, you are correct in your assumptions, but Elias, I had been made to believe you were growing more comfortable with your past, and that having something to walk towards might further improve your mental stability. I must say I am rather surprised you are not happier about this. Is this not something you desire?
Elias couldn't help himself. He laughed madly. He turned away, covering his mouth as he tried to prevent it, but the low chuckle escaped anyway, and it quickly rose in volume as his chest was racked with sadistic laughter. He clutched his stomach, aching in pain at his wounds as he tried to calm himself down. It didn't work. The voices in his head provided no guidance. They were panicking as much as he was. Still, his cackling had to wind down sometime, and Elias had to wipe a tear from his eyes as he stared at Celestia, shaking his head, a mad grin on his face. "I do hope that was a joke, Princess, because if it was anything else, you're going to be very glad I gave you my sword." He paused for a moment, then snorted and chuckled. "I'm going to leave now. I think that's the smart thing to do. I think I'll go somewhere quiet to cool off, and I suggest that nobody follow me." Luna decided not to listen to what Elias thought was a coherent, intelligent statement.
Elias, please, let us explain.
"Shut up!" Elias snapped, the grin disappearing. Luna flinched back, as did all the ponies save for Celestia, whose smile disappeared. She frowned heavily at Elias, but he couldn't care less as he glared at Luna. "You don't get to speak my name anymore," Elias snarled. "She," he said, jabbing a finger at Celestia, "said that she was made to believe that I was getting better, that this farce was something I wanted, and there are only a few people that I know that would be able to tell her something like that, a lie though it may be."
It isn't a lie, Elias,
Luna pleaded.
Please, have you not improved? Do you not feel like you're better placed than before?
"No!" Elias shouted back. "Because how much of it is true? How much has this been your goal the entire time?" Elias flinched under his own words, and his anger momentarily dissipated. Had this been her plan? Was it a lie? His mind flashed back through not only her actions, but those of everyone around him. His eye twitched as he tried to deny what was sitting before his eyes. "Has it?" he asked her softly, praying that he was wrong. Elias could tell from a glance that he was right. Luna had tears in her eyes, and she was shaking her head. But that wasn't a no. It was just denial of the fact that he had exposed the truth. Elias felt a part of his heart die, and the voice in the back of his head vanished, beating into a cage by the weight of this revelation. Still, Elias clung to a shred of hope. He needed to hear it. "How much?" he asked, his voice rising. "How much of it was a lie to get me here?" Nobody answered him. They only stared. Elias swallowed roughly and looked towards the stained glass window. He roughly ran his hand down his beard, trying to piece his words together through the wave of anger that was rising in his mind. "If nobody else has to do it, then I guess I have to," Elias said. "Let's start with the obvious, I guess. The citizenship. That wasn't supposed to make me closer with ponies. That was to appease some law so that I could hold the position of general, right?" Luna opened her mouth, no doubt to deny his words, but Elias continued anyway, cutting her off. "The exercise. Palisade was put in the position, not because you wanted him to learn something about being a leader, but to make me comfortable with the idea of leading, right?" Elias' fingernails bit in his palms as he struggled to keep his arms at his side. His body quivered with barely contained anger. "How much more?" he asked, looking to Luna. "What else was a lie? Did you actually save my life, or was that some sort of deception to make me feel indebted to you? Do I actually have any friends? Any family?" The accusation cut at his heart even as it made it. Or were they all agents feeding me a steady stream of lies that made me comfortable with myself again, How much of my fucking life is a goddamn lie? His roar provoked a reaction. Luna whimpered and flinched away, hiding behind Celestia as the other alicorn spread her wings wide. Chaser leapt in front of the throne, his wing blades extended, and after a moment of hesitation, Nightshade did as well. Elias imagined that if he was armed, they would fight, but he was lucky enough to have the foresight to get rid of his sword belt. Either way, it didn't matter. He was spent. His anger vanished into the air as Elias found that he was no longer able to sustain the level of rage he would need to keep going. Not against the ponies, at least. Their deception had been perfect, and he couldn't find it within himself, no matter how angry he was, to raise a hand against them. Not in serious combat. They made him weak, and so any fight he had left in his body vanished as he rocked in place, holding back the tears of pain that threatened to spill forth. Elias took a shaky breath as he continued. "I thought..." He snorted weakly and shook his head. "I don't know what I thought. Maybe I didn't think at all." He looked up, finding Luna staring at him with pain in her eyes. "I have to say, you did an excellent job. I really believed what you were telling me. I thought, just for a heartbeat, that I could be something more. That maybe, just maybe, I had a chance to be something other than a fucking killer." Elias ran both his hands through his hair as his eyes fell to the floor. "But I guess not. It doesn't matter though, so congratulations, because I won't strike out against you. You did a damn good job of neutering me. Like a stray dog." He finished, his voice containing nothing. He snorted once as he turned around, walking towards the doors. "I'm leaving. Don't expect me back, and don't you dare follow me." Elias mustered enough anger to slam through the doors, and then he took off at a run, desperate for a place of sanctuary. He needed to be alone. Luna felt her heart shatter into pieces as the human left her throne room. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. She knew the words to say to reassure him, but his anger, it had caused her to freeze. His eyes had betrayed what he was hiding beneath that desperate facade that had fooled everyone else. He was terrified. He was terrified, and she had done nothing to ease his fears. She hadn't put the pieces together, but when he explained it, he was right. It was all set up. He had been pushed down the road that led him here, in the last place he wanted to end up, and now he believed that every step along the way had been carefully orchestrated to make him a leader again. Saucy sighed as she dropped her wings.
Gentle ponies, please excuse my sister and I, but we shall postpone this meeting until a later time. That did not go as intended. Please, there is a reception awaiting all of you in the royal dining room. Enjoy your fill of the evening off. I shall send you letters when we require your presence once more. General Chaser, please stay for a moment.
Luna sniffled, rubbing at her eyes as she tried to muster up her normal princess demeanor.
And you as well, General Nightshade.
The two had matching frowns on their faces, though Nightshade would occasionally glance behind her at the closed throne room doors. The other ponies filtered out, whispering amongst themselves, no doubt about what had just transpired. Luna reached out with her hoof, dragging Elias' sword belt to rest before her. She had almost never seen a human without it, and the fact that he had given it away willingly chilled her to the core. It implied that he was done with her completely, and Luna found that she was terrified at that implication. She tucked the belt under her wing, pressing it tight against her chest as she mentally promised herself by the end of the day, Elias would have the blade back. Once the throne room was empty, save for the four of them, Saucy shook her head.
I do not understand. All the signs seemed to indicate that Elias was growing more comfortable with his past, yet his reaction seemed more akin to the way he was when we found him. Paranoid, angry, bitter. I cannot fathom what has been going on within that head of his.
Luna sighed, briefly taking a moment to catch a bit of the human scent from his leather belt. It was a bit sweatier than his hair had been, but it was more than enough to brighten her mood.
Nay, sister. It is almost the opposite, in fact. Elias has grown increasingly secretive, even with his friends, and I'm afraid that we have just shattered whatever progress he made within an afternoon.
She looked to Celestia, who was eyeing her with sympathy.
Luna, I am sorry for the things he said. He might have been angry, but he had no right to accuse you like he did.
Luna shrugged as she let her face become a mask.
Perhaps not, sister, but as I think on his words, I find that I can understand where he is coming from. Is there any merit to the accusation that his citizenship was merely to make him qualify to be a general?
Celestia nodded and looked away in shame.
It was, but I meant it when I said I wanted him to be closer to our ponies. It satisfied both needs in one fell swoop.
Luna sighed.
Perhaps, but that one grain of truth is enough to make the rest of his accusations seem true as well, untrue though they may be. The rest was simply coincidence.
She frowned as she stood, taking her time climbing down the stairs to the throne.
I made Palisade Teed captain again in the hopes that he would learn the value of an advisor, since that would be the role he would assume under General Nightshade. Elias made an excellent role model for this, and in truth, I am glad that the captains were dismissed before this fiasco. If we can comfort Elias, then Palisade's role model will stand, and he will serve well.
She motioned for Nightshade to follow her as she made her to the throne room doors. Leslie's voice stopped her, however.
Luna, where are you going? To fix my mistakes, Tia,
she replied calmly.
I have been such a fool to think he was ready for a burden such as this. I have watched him night and day and saw every sign that he wouldn't want this, would never want this. I have not discovered the whole story, but I know enough to know that giving him a family, giving him friends only made this offer worse. He is terrified of losing everything, and the wedding made that a frightening reality.
She scoffed and shook her head.
And I am doubly damned a fool for springing this on him now. His adoptive parents only returned today, and he had no time to take comfort in his emotional rocks. I have taken a cracked man and broken him. Elias is scared, angry. If we do not help him now, he will run. I will not allow that.
She paused, a slip of the tongue away from making an irreversible confession.
He is my god, and therefore my responsibility. And despite what he may believe, he is my friend. I will not leave Elias in his time of need.
She didn't wait for a reply as Nightshade opened the doors before her. Once through, they walked at a brisk trot, with Nightshade combing the hallways as they passed.
What's the plan, Princess?
Nightshade asked.
Do we need to put out an alert for Elias?
Luna shook her head.
No. That will only make him run. You and I, and perhaps Dr. Scalpel, shall search for him. Anybody else will not know how to handle Elias, especially not in the emotional state the human is in now. What about Night Flash and Bookbinder?
As she'd pointed out.
They know Elias better than anyone else.
On a side.
I wish to involve them, but Elias believes he's been living a lie. He may lash out at them, and they have already had an incident like that once. I would rather they not repeat it.
There we go. Another fantastic chapter and definitely one of my favorites of this arc. I hope you guys enjoy this slightly longer than usual. I will plan on putting out at least one more chapter before going into my normal schedule. So hey, I hope you guys enjoy. What else you guys would enjoy is my friend Squall Windfeather's newest chapter of Somnambulance. I am chilling hard because I love the writing and I plan on making a big project out of it. Well, I can't wait for that, and I hope he watches the end of this video. Hey, I love you. What else I love are my wonderful Patreons. My Tier 1 Patreons, Squall Windfeather, I, Rain Flicker, Starlight Blaze, Stu Hex, Dreamless Portal. My Tier 2 Patreons, Chase the Master, Sword Brother and Mordred, Nocturne, Solus, RD Bryant, Captain Blue Shadow, HKH4 aka Texture, and The Animated Ghost. And of course a large thank you to Silent Titan. That aside, however, this has been Fireheart. Have a wonderful day.